All right, here we go. So we are, doesn't sound like it, but we're actually reviewing for a test. It sounds crazy in here. All right, so I'll call this test review. And what is it? I said section R what? 7? No, R.5. And R.7.
Like, this is one of our all-year classes, right?
Of course it is. It's a math class. It's all year. Yeah. What other math class do you have half a year?
Middletown.
Come on.
Yeah, Middletown.
Are you at Middletown? Okay.
Yeah, Middletown, we had different classes.
How long have you been here?
A year.
Well, why would we compare it to Middletown? All right, here we go. 7, 8, 9, and 10, right? Let's do 7. Oops, there goes my pen again. All right, here we go. So let's do 7. Here we go. 3x over x minus 4 plus 2x over x plus 3. All right, here we go. I hope you're listening. We do have a test tomorrow. It doesn't sound like you know we have a test tomorrow, or there wouldn't be so much talking. All right, first thing we do, I'll go through this quickly, okay? I'm recording it. You can go back and look at the lesson when I first taught it if you want to. That might be helpful to you, but we're going to find common denominators. If there are two completely different denominators, the way to find a common denominator is to just multiply them together. So the common denominator would be x minus 4 times x plus 3. Okay, that would be your common denominator. And I've said this 100 times, if I've said it once. What do we multiply x minus 4 by in order to get this denominator? Multiplied it by what? An x plus 3 to get to that. So what do we do to the top? We multiply that by an x plus 3. All right, we'll work that out here in a minute. Let's do the next denominator. What do we multiply x plus 3 by in order to get this whole thing right here? What's missing? An x minus 4. So we multiply this by x minus 4. Okay? That's the meat and potatoes of this problem right here. Okay? This is the main gist of this problem, is finding the numerator. So here we go. Now, you could write it out here if you want to, but let's just do the multiplication now. All right, we're going to take this 3x and distribute it through this. So what do we get? We get 3x squared plus 3x times 3, which is 9x. And then do the next one. This is a plus. That's very important right there. Okay, so this doesn't really change anything, but when there's a minus, which we do, we have a problem. Number 9 and number 6 really as well. You have a minus. But this one you have a plus, so you don't have to worry about the signs that much. So it's just 2x times x, which is positive 2x squared. And then minus, because of that minus right there, 2x times 4, which is 8x. And we're almost done. Just add like terms. 3x squared plus 2x squared, what is that? It's 5x squared. All right, so I'm done with that one, and I'm done with that one. And then we have this. We got a plus 9x minus 8x. What's that? It's a plus x over, and then it's x minus 4, and it's x plus 3. And you're done. That's it. That's all you had to do. Some of you guys are multiplying this stuff together. Look at the instructions. Look what it says. It's right above number 4. Look at your quiz. What does it say? Leave your answer in what? Factored form. Okay? So just leave it like this. This is already factored. Okay, that's factored form. Don't multiply these two things together. Don't do the FOIL method to figure out what that is. There's no need to do it. Now, if you did it and you did it correctly, I'd still give you credit for it. It wouldn't be wrong. But there's no need to go any further. That's it. You are done. Some people factored out an x from this. Now, technically you could. I wouldn't mark it wrong if you did. You could factor out an x from this. What would be left over if I factor out an x? 5x plus 1. All right? But there's no reason to do that, because does x cancel with anything down here? No. Does 5x plus 1 cancel with anything down here? No. There's no reason to do that because nothing's going to cancel anyway. So just leave it like this. We good with that? All right. If you're not, go back, watch when I taught the lesson originally. Maybe I'll have some more insights to that, but I pretty much showed you how to do that whole thing. All right, let's do number 8. So it's x. This is similar to 7. It's definitely got a couple steps more involved. It's definitely more involved than 7 is. Plus 3x. But you got something you have to do here that you're going to have to do on the whole entire test we're going to take tomorrow. I think every single problem, I don't know for sure. I've got it written out, but I just can't remember exactly. But I think every single problem, you're going to have to factor something. Okay, you will have to factor, most likely, every single problem tomorrow. Okay, what's that? 20. There's always 20. So you're going to have to know how to factor. I strongly suggest, if you have no idea how to factor stuff, that you go back and you watch my videos, watch a Khan Academy video if you need to, if he explains it better than I do, which he probably does. And I've talked about that enough. All right, so the factoring. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the bottom of this and we're going to factor it. And this is just a regular trinomial factoring. It really doesn't get a whole lot easier than this particular factor right here. So I put 2 sets of parentheses and put an x here and an x here. Now these two have to multiply to be 2 and they have to add up to be a positive 3. It can't be any easier, can it? What times what is 2 and what plus what is 3? 2 and 1, that's right. Okay, there's a 2 and there's a 1. Doesn't get any easier to factor. Would you agree with that? Sure, it's very easy. Okay, that's factoring. Right? Number 10 is basically the same thing, except you got to do 4 of them on number 10. All right, we'll get to it in a minute. This is one of our special type of factoring. It's not a regular trinomial factoring, but it's an actual easy factoring. It's one of the easiest factorings that you're going to do. And what's the name of it? It's called the difference of 2 squares. This is a difference of 2 squares. So if you know how to factor a difference of 2 squares, it's in my lessons. Look them up if you need to. So x plus 1, x minus 1. All right, everybody see that? Because 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. X times x is x squared. If I add up the outside and the inside, you're going to get a 0x, which basically you have right there. All right. That's our very first step. We haven't even thought about adding these fractions together just yet. All we did was factor what we could factor. Everybody good so far? So now we got to find a common denominator. The reason why you want to factor it, because now it makes it a lot easier to find a common denominator once they're factored. So what do you have? We got 2 sides, right? You got x plus 2, x plus 1. Then over here you got an x plus 1 and an x minus 1. So remember we talked about that least common multiple thing? We said what numbers show up? All right. Well, there's an x plus 2. Is there an x plus 2 over here? No, but that's okay. They don't have to be in both places. It just has to show up at least once. So an x plus 2 shows up, right? It's in there. So I use an x plus 2. So I'm going to pick out an x plus 2. What other numbers show up here? What about x plus 1? Yep, it shows up here. Does it show up here? Yes. Do I have to use them both? If it shows up the same number of places, or the same number of times in both places, you just take how many times it shows up. It shows up once here, and it shows up once here. Okay, so how many do we take? Just one of them, just the x plus 1. I recall one person making 4 things down here. X plus 2, x plus 1, x plus 1, and x minus 1. You don't need that extra x plus 1. It makes it too difficult. So you picked an x plus 1. What other thing shows up? And there's an x minus 1 right here. So I pick an x minus 1 and I put it here. That's the method for that least common multiple. We had a whole lesson on the least common multiple method. Look it up, okay, on my channel, and you'll find it, and I talk about how to do that. Now what you have to do is ask yourself, what did you do to this stuff, this denominator, to get to this? What's missing? I have an x plus 2 and an x plus 1. What's missing that's down here? There's an x minus 1. So what do I have to do to this? I multiply it by x minus 1, and I multiply the top by an x minus 1. You see that? You see what's missing. What's missing here? There's an x minus 1, so you multiply the top by an x minus 1. What about this? What's missing to this? There's an x plus 2, right? Right? I'm comparing this denominator to this one. There's no x plus 2, so I had to multiply this by an x plus 2. What do I do to the top? Multiply it by an x plus 2. Why in the world did I put parentheses around it? Because I'm going to have to do what kind of method? I'm going to have to do the FOIL method. It is distributive. You'd be right by saying distributive, but more precisely, I guess, would be FOIL method. So now what we're going to do is we're going to multiply this stuff together. So we just distribute this x through here. What do I get when I distribute that x? I get an x squared minus an x. Easy enough. This one, there's a plus, which makes it kind of easy, but when you will have a problem, and I think it's the very next one. Yeah, it's number 9, where this is going to be a minus. You got to be very careful when this is a minus here. A lot of you guys messed up with that minus, and I talked about it many, many times when we went over these problems. It's a plus, so you don't have to worry too much about it. So now what do we do with this stuff? We just FOIL it, right? So let's go ahead and FOIL. So the first, I multiply those together, and I get 2x squared. What about the outside? What do I get here? 2x times 2? That's a 4x. What about the inside? That's a minus 3x. And what about the last? That's a minus 6. We're almost finished. I'm going to rewrite the denominator. Don't forget about that. Now, just add like terms. I heard somebody say that. That's what we do. We add like terms. So, what do we got? I got x squareds here, don't I? Let's add up the x squareds. I got 1x squared and I got 2x squared. How many is that? That's 3x squared. So I've done adding up the x squareds. That was easy. Let's add up the x's. I got a minus x, a plus 4x, and a minus 3x. Well, look at this 4x minus 3x. What's that going to be? 1x. Or x, right? And then this is a minus x. So what happens to the x's? Yeah, they all add up to 0, don't they? We can just cancel them out because it adds up to 0. Would you agree? Yep. Negative 1x plus 4x is 3x. Minus 3x is 0. What's left over? Minus 6. Now, some of you might look at this and say, hey, I could factor out a 3. All right? And what would I be left with? I'd be left with this. But is there any reason to factor out a 3? This x squared minus 2, this is not a difference of 2 squares because you can't take the square root of 2. So does anything cancel if I factored out a 3? No, nothing would cancel. So I just leave it just like that. And that's your answer. That's all there is to it. All right, it's recorded. So go back and look at it. And let's go on to the next one. The next one's very similar to what we just did, except, what did I say earlier? You got a minus in between. It's basically the same problem, different numbers and stuff, but it's basically the same problem except for that minus. And that does cause a little bit of a problem, but once you realize what to do with that minus, there it is right there. It's not that big of a deal if you realize what you have to do with it. All right, just like we did earlier, we're going to factor. This is a difference of 2 squares. So we factor it. And you got to know how to do difference of 2 squares. If you don't, go back, watch the video where I talked about this, or watch Khan Academy. He'll show you how to do it too. What about this? This factors. What multiplies to be a negative 6 and will add up to be a positive 1? 3 and 2 is going to work, right? 5 and 1's not, or 6 and 1's not going to work, is it? Because there's no way I can get a 1 out of a 6 and a 1. But a 3 and a 2 I could. Which one's going to be the positive one? Is it going to be the 3 or the 2? It's going to be the 3, because the the 3 is going to be positive because when it adds together, you're going to get a positive 1 out of it. So I'm going to get a plus 3 and a minus 2. Everybody see that? They multiply to be negative 6, and they add up to be positive 1. You got to come up with those numbers. Again, I'm not going to go through that anymore. I'll just put a 4x here and a 2 here. That's our first step. All we did was just factor. Now what we have to do is find a common denominator. We just did it earlier, so I'm going to go a little faster on this. You got an x plus 2 here. There's none here, but that's okay. You still have an x plus 2 that shows up, so I'm just going to write down an x plus 2. What else shows up? An x minus 2. Well, there's one over here. Do we use them both? No, I just use one of them, so I just put x minus 2. What other thing shows up? What else is being multiplied? An x plus 3. Even though it's not over here, that's fine. It's got to show up in just one of the places. That's my common denominator right there. So what did you do to this to get to this? What's missing? An x plus 3. So I multiply that by x plus 3. You see how it's almost exactly like that last problem we did? Okay, what about this? What's missing here to here? An x plus 2. This is actually just a tad easier because you don't have to worry about doing a FOIL method, do you? All right, it's just regular distributive. But that minus, this acts as a what? Not a just 2, but a negative 2. All right, we're going to worry about that in just a second. Let's do this one first. Let's distribute the 4x through here. So that gives us 4x squared plus 12x. See it? 4x times 3. Now, this is where a lot of you went wrong if you got this wrong. This is a negative 2, right, because of that negative right there. So it's negative 2 times x, which is negative 2x. And most of you got that part. It's the next one that you forgot. A lot of you guys put plus, but it's not a plus because remember what this is. This is a negative 2. So it's negative 2 times x, which is negative 2x, and it's a negative 2 times a positive 2, which is a what? Minus 4. It's probably where you went wrong. Anybody want to raise their hand? Admit it. That's where you went wrong. You got everything else right except for that? Okay. No, you don't need a parentheses because I've already distributed through here. You didn't need a parentheses here, right, because I distributed. So I took that negative 2 and distributed it through that. And I got this. And we're almost done. Now's the easy part. There's no x squareds to add up, so I just write 4x squared. Plus 12x minus 2x is plus 10x, and then minus 4. And then the bottom, just rewrite the bottom. And then that's it. Just leave it like that. There's no reason to multiply that bottom and get some big old... I don't know what was going on, but a lot of people were multiplying those together. Okay? And I don't know why, because I never told you to do it. All right. Everybody good with that? You can go back and watch it. I'm recording it. Let me make sure I'm recording it. Yep, it's being recorded. Just making sure. All right, number 10. Oops, here's my pen again. Do that every day. All right, here we go. Number 10. It's going to take me longer just to write down the problem than it will to actually do it. But I tell you what, I will skip one little step. Instead of writing it down exactly the way it looks on the quiz, I'm going to do this. Instead of dividing by all the stuff on the bottom, do you remember what we do when we divide fractions? We multiply by the what? So let's just do it right now. Is that all right with you? Instead of rewriting that whole problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal of that denominator. So if you're looking at the quiz, this is the reciprocal of the denominator. See, that was on the bottom. Agreed? But now reciprocal means you flip it, so now you put it to the top. This one was on the top, and we put it on the bottom. This is the same exact thing as what the quiz says, isn't it? Except we turned it from division into multiplication. That's a lot better like that, don't you think? Yeah. Now watch. This basically is just 4 factoring problems, and then we just cancel a couple things out. That's all it is. So if you know how to factor, and I've said that dozens of times, that this test is all going to be about factoring. So let's factor it. Okay? So what do we get? What multiplies to be 6 and adds up to be 7? 6 and 1. That's pretty easy, right? Especially when they're all positive. When they're all positive, it's usually pretty easy. It's when one of them's negative, you got to think a little bit. We already did this one, didn't we? 3 and 2, right? Positive 3, negative 2. Why is the 3 positive? Because when you add them up, it needs to be a positive 1. Right? If I put a negative 3 and a positive 2, I'd still get a negative 6, but it would add up to a negative x, which it's not. It's a positive. So you got to have it like this. What do you think of this trinomial factoring stuff? Yeah, as long as the coefficient is a 1, it's pretty easy. All right, so what do we got here? I'll put an x and an x. What do we got here? You're going to use 6 and 1 or 3 and 2? 6 and 1? You sure? Think about it. 6 and 1 doesn't add up to 5. What adds up to 5? 3 and 2. So plus 3. You got to think a little bit about it. Okay? You got to think about your arithmetic. That's why it's nice to know your multiplication tables. People tell me all the time, well, I don't need to know my multiplication tables. I got a calculator. It does it all for me. But when you're doing stuff like this, it's so much better just to be able to think in your head than to punch stuff into a calculator. It takes way too long. Well, don't mess up in your head. Okay, I'm not even going to argue. It's not always true. I've seen so many people make mistakes putting stuff into a calculator. All right? Learn how to do stuff in your head. All right? Learn how to think. We have to learn. Okay, I was going to get started. Not going to. I'm going to keep on going. All right. I always have these little speeches deep inside of me waiting to come out, and I'm suppressing it right now. Okay, so here we go. Negative 6. These have to multiply to be negative 6 and add up to be a positive 5. That's it. Positive 6 and negative 1. It multiplies to be negative 6 and it adds up to be a positive 5. Again, just thinking about it. By the time you pulled out the calculator, I could have already factored that thing, okay? By the time you turned it on, I could have factored it. By the time you pushed the first button, I could have factored it, all right? So here we go. And it's not just me. You guys should be the same. You guys should be the same, all right? Here we go. And I'm not one of those calculator guys. I'm not an arithmetic guy. I'm really not. But there are basic things that you should be able to do in your head, all right? So here we go. Now the fun part. The fun part is canceling stuff out. So what cancels out on the top and the bottom here? Well, let's do the first one. X plus 6 cancels with this x plus 6, doesn't it? X plus 3 cancels with this x plus 3. Does the x plus 1 and the x minus 1? No, they're not the same. So, and the x plus 2 is not the same as x minus 2. So here's our answer. And there is absolutely no reason to multiply these things out. It just is a waste of time. Just leave it like this. This is the way the instructions told you to leave it. Okay? Just leave it like that, and that's your answer. Now, you tell me, was that one really that difficult? It was not. So it wasn't just me talking. It's not just because I'm a math teacher and I teach this stuff. It truly is not that difficult. Okay? For a high school senior, any high school senior should be able to handle something like this. All right, that's the quiz. So, we've got 6 minutes left. I don't think I have the R.5 quiz in front of me. Does anybody have the R.5 quiz in front of me, in front of you? Can I borrow it from somebody just so I can see the problems on it? Okay, bring it up to me. So it have all the right answers on it? All right, let's do ones the trinomial factoring, we're good with that. Let's do something like this. So this is from the R.5 quiz. This is from the R.5 quiz. And that's what the test tomorrow is just going to be on R.5 and R.7. So basically, I did half of your R.7 quiz, just, this whole period, and then R.5. All right, so let's do a couple of them really quick. So I've got 4x squared plus 12x. No, I'm just going to say to factor. Now this particular one, now watch. And in fact, I don't even think I'm going to put one of the... Now this does have a coefficient other than 1, but this is a special kind of factoring. I'm not going to give you... I don't even know how to explain it, but there was a factoring when the coefficient was not 1 that was kind of difficult. It was several steps. You had to multiply the 4 times 9, and you put it over here, and then you found out what multiplied by what and added up to be what. I'm not going to put the real difficult factoring ones on there, okay? But this could be on there. This is a special factoring, okay? And this is a perfect square. How do you know it's a perfect square? Well, first of all, look at the ends. Can you take the square root of 4? Yes. Can you take the square root of x squared? Yes. Can you take the square root of 9? Yes, you can. So that's a good hint that it's a perfect square. How do I know for sure it's a perfect square? Well, let's take the square root of this. What would the square root of 4x squared be? 2x. What would the square root of 3 be? So I got a 2x times a 3. I'm sorry. What would the square root of 9? I was giving the answer. What's the square root of 9 going to be? I was thinking ahead. Times, it would be 3, wouldn't it? So that's what? 6x. How do I know if it's a perfect square? If I can take the square root of this one, the square root of this one, and when you multiply them together and do what to it? Nope. Multiply by 2. If you double it, that should be the middle term. Does it? Is it the middle term?
Yes.
It is. If all that stuff is true about one of these factorings, then it's a perfect square. Then it's really easy to factor it. So all you have to do is this. Okay? What did we say the square root of this was? 2x. What did we say the square root of this was? A 3. Always use this sign right here, and there it is. It's factored. If you can realize that it's a perfect square, perfect squares are fairly easy to factor. I think the difference of two squares is the easiest of them all, but this isn't too bad. You just have to realize, is it a perfect square or not? Okay? Let's do another one. Let's do number 8 on the quiz. This is number 8 on the quiz. This was number 7 on the quiz. This was R.5 quiz. This one said x to the 7th minus x to the 5th. The first thing I would always do when you factor is to see if there is a common factor. It's the first thing you should always do, to see if there's a common factor. Is there something in common with both of these? Carter? X to the 5th is in common with both of them. And so what we're going to do is we're going to factor it out or divide it out. So you take an x to the 5th out of an x to the 7th. We're dividing it out. X to the 7th divided by x to the 5th. What does that give us then? X squared. We take the x to the 5th and divide it by x to the 5th. What does that give us? It's a 1. Okay? Is this completely factored, though? Because it says factor completely. Because what do you recognize about x squared minus 1? It can be factored, but what kind of factoring is it? I've said it a couple times today already. It's a difference of two squares. Okay, it's a difference. When we actually did this exact difference of two squares earlier today. And so this is going to be an x plus 1. This is going to be an x minus 1. And now it's completely factored. That's 8 on the quiz. So again, if you know how to do the quiz on R.5 and R.7, you should be able to do the test. Let's do number 9. Do we have time? We've got like 2 minutes. All right. It's going to take me 2 minutes to write down the whole thing. Plus 10x plus 25. Why are we packing up? My goodness. We should be writing this stuff down. Here we go. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to factor this stuff right here. This is a perfect square. Okay, this is a perfect square. So, actually, I don't even need those 2 sets of parentheses. All right, so I've got an x plus what? 5, right? Because if I go 5 times x and double it, it's 10x. That's a perfect square. Okay, minus 4 times x plus 5. Don't distribute this out because we're trying to factor it. So now, what do we have? What do we have in common here? We got an x plus 5 in common, don't we? So let's factor out an x plus 5 from this. What am I left with? 3 times another x plus 5 minus what? A 4. Okay, and then we're almost done. Take the x plus 5, distribute it. What's that? 3x plus 15. 15 minus 4, what's that? 9. So 3x what? Plus 9. And did I let you leave it like that? Probably not. I let you have that? No. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. Not 9. It's not 9. Right. C gauge, where's your calculator? It's right there. So I messed up in my head. I was making fun of myself. So there it is. That's how you factor number 9. All right. The quiz is over R5 and R7. Look through or the test. Look through your quizzes. Make sure you know how to do them. Is that your phone? Or is it a boost? Yes. Let me stop the recording first.